The Guildford Junior Chess Club reconvened for the spring term last Monday, and I was very pleased to be part of a group which contained no less than 13 really strong students. The group's improving, everybody's getting stronger, we're getting new people in by the week, so it's a really encouraging beginning to the term. And not only that, I think there were 30 or 40 other kids who take part in a larger second group downstairs in the Guildford Institute, and apparently they are learning and all having fun at the same time. So Guildford Junior Chess Club's really expanding. Now this week I used a training technique I've been using for years, really, going through a game and then stopping the game at various moments, giving the players, the students, 3 separate alternatives to choose from for the next move for white. So we're going to take a look at a very entertaining game between Nakamura playing white and Smirin, Israeli grandmaster, playing with black. It's quite an old game. It comes from the Foxwoods Open back in 2005. And we're going to employ exactly the same technique in this game. We're going to freeze the game at certain moments, and then I'll ask you to choose from 3 alternatives. So the opening is a modern defence, and Nakamura chooses the Austrian attack, which is one of white's sharpest possibilities, even today. Clearly, there is a difference between the modern and Perk defences, in that the Black Knight is still on g8 here, whereas in the Perk, he might have already come out to f6. Well, Smirin decides to go into a Perk, and of course, this is a rather provocative choice. Now, I'm not sure that you would see Nakamura playing this variation today, but he played e5. And that's just about the sharpest option for white at this point. Clearly, white can play bishop d3. He can play bishop e3. He can play bishop e2. There are plenty of moves for white in this position. But e5, as I say, is one of the sharpest. And black dropped his knight back to d7. So this was the first position where I gave them the choice. Should white play option A, bishop c4? Should he play option B, h4? Or should he play option C, bishop e3? So the kids would write down these 3 options on a piece of paper and maybe discuss it with their friends in a small group of 2 or 3, and then come up with an answer. And then we'd have a little discussion about the position. So what do you think? Bishop c4, bishop e3, or h4? Okay, well, in the game, Nakamura played the razor-sharp h4. This is just about the most uncompromising line against the Perk defence that could possibly be. You know, white launches the kingside attack straight away, without delay. He recognises that black's going to break up his centre with a move like c5. That's exactly what Smirin did. But, yeah, he's going to take that risk and go for the throat right away. Now, just retracting h4, the other moves are perfectly fine. Bishop e3 is okay. Of the 2 moves of the bishop, I probably prefer bishop c4 here. It's slightly more incisive. White's thinking about the move e6. He's thinking about the move knight g5. And in this variation, actually, black can get into serious hot water if he doesn't know what he's doing. Actually, looking at this position from an analytical point of view, there's also knight g5 here, once again intending e6. And this is, again, just about as crazy as it gets. This is a very sharp variation, however you want to play it. But h4, well, there we go. Very aggressive. Funnily enough, not many people in the group chose that. They prefer bishop c4 in general. It was interesting to see that the only 2 girls in the group, who are also strong players, chose h4. And that was encouraging to see, because, you know, girl players should try to play aggressively if they can. Well, black played c5, breaking up the centre. White pushed on. Black took on d4. And now we came to the same second position where I was giving him a choice. So, should white play here? The piece sacrifice, h takes g6. Should he play queen takes d4? Or should he play knight takes d4? So those are the 3 options. 3 captures. You can sack a piece, or you can take on d4 with either the queen or the knight. So what would you do? Okay, well, the group were getting into it at this stage, and most of them sacrificed a piece. I did warn them that it was very easy to sacrifice somebody else's pieces, but nevertheless, they went ahead. And of course, that is the most consistent continuation in this position. Very sharp, and black has really got to take the knight on c3 and brave the coming attack. Just going back, it is interesting to obviously knight takes d4 is the worst of the three moves. I mean, that just allows black to smash up white's centre straight away, and that scored no points at all. But queen takes d4 is quite interesting, and it looks poor. I mean, what's to stop black from attacking the queen straight away with knight c6 or maybe pawn takes pawn? Well, white's not going to take that pawn back on e5, and there are a couple of possibilities for white. Queen f2 is one of them. Queen g1 is a second. The mouse slipped there, so let's see queen f2 as well. Queen f2 intends to put the queen out on h4 at a certain moment, and queen g1 intends perhaps to put the queen on h2. These are various really interesting sharp possibilities that were analysed in Ray Keane's old book with George Botterill on the Perk Defence, an old Batsford book, which actually I've got in front of me right now. That was a groundbreaking volume as far as I'm concerned, where lots of really sharp stuff was analysed. And in the days before computers, that was a Herculean feat to try to analyse this position. Anyway, let's go back to the game with white sacrificing a piece, black taking the piece, and now white taking on f7. Check. It's worth pointing out here that taking on h7 is not as good, because then black plays king h8. He's actually using the white pawn as a shield for his own king, and white finds it really difficult to take the attack further from here. So that would be a mistake for white. But taking on f7 is not a mistake at all. Rook takes f7. And now we come to another position where I was asking him to choose the move. And this is now getting quite tough. So should white play in this position bishop c4? That's option 1, pinning the rook to the king. Should he play e6, forking rook and knight? Or should he play knight g5, forking the rook and the pawn on h7? And this is by no means an easy choice, so we took a bit longer on this one. And yeah, it's interesting to ponder what white should do. Well, of course, this is crazy stuff. And in the game, Nakamura played bishop c4, which I'm pretty sure most of you would have played, because it introduces a new piece into the attack. That's what I like about it. If we go back, obviously e6 is definitely a candidate move here, with horrendous complications. Yes, white is threatening two pieces, but he's opened up the diagonal for the bishop on g7. Mayhem could result. And knight g5, also a good move, also an interesting move. But it turns out that black can probably beat back the attack after that. So all things considered, bishop c4 is probably best. And Smirin dropped back. Knight to f8. Well, here we go. Knight to g5 by Nakamura. e6. And now 3 more moves for you. Should white play in this position? Knight takes rook on f7. Should he play pawn to f5, intending to open the game up completely? Or should he play queen h5? So knight takes rook, f5, or queen h5. Well, in the game, knight takes f7 was played. That's pretty straightforward. It's not a question of taking the rook. It's a question of forcing the black king out into the open so that he can be harassed by the white queen. Taking a look at the other moves here, of course, queen h5 could be played, but then I think black has the very cool rook to c7. And apparently that move stops all of white's threats. It's hard to believe, but in fact, black is covering lots of squares. So just dropping back, f5. Well, that's perhaps not as good as the other moves. One move black can certainly consider is taking that pawn with his rook. And I'm not sure what white's achieving. So that was the worst of the three options. I'm pleased to say in the game that most people chose knight takes rook. Pawn takes pawn. A sharp Zwischenzug, an in-between move. Instead of routinely taking the knight, black flicks in a capture on b2. With the idea if white plays knight takes queen, then black can take the rook and get a new queen in the corner. So white recaptures, black gives a check, very important. Well, white doesn't want the queens off in this position, so he plays king f1, and only now does black take on h5. In comes the queen. Back goes the king. Well, now we have a very sharp position on our hands. Nakamura played bishop d3, queen to b4. And now this was the next position where I offered them the chance of three moves. So should white play in this situation? Should he play rook b1? Should he play bishop c1? Or should he play rook h4? Over to you. Well, this is one of the easiest questions of the lot. The black queen's very active. Obviously, she's attacking two white pieces. But the problem with rook h4 is that, of course, it doesn't defend the bishop. So black will take the bishop and be material ahead. The only decent move here is rook to b1. Strange looking move in the middle of an attack. White just protects the bishop, but it's a very strong move because it sets up ideas. Black's got a traffic jam of pieces on the queen side, which he tried to resolve by playing bishop d7. But white's attack persists. And now we come to the next critical position. So should white play here? Option A, rook h3. Option B, rook h4. Option C, c4. Over to you. Okay, well, white played a really good move now, c4, and I hope you got that. It's probably better than the other two moves because it tries to cut the black queen out of the game, and this is very important. It also has the added benefit of stopping bishop b5 by black, which could have been a little bit annoying for the white king. So two things with one move, and quite an effective idea. Smirin plunged in with his queen, and again renewing the idea of taking on f4. All right, three more moves for you. Did white play rook h3 here? Did white play bishop takes h7 check here? Did white play rook d1 here? Let's not forget, black's attacking this bishop, black's attacking the pawn. Okay, back to you. Rook h3, protecting the bishop, bishop h7 check, going for gold, or rook d1, both protecting the bishop and attacking the queen. Well, of course, when you do this exercise, you have to modify the types of moves you're suggesting to the strength of the group. I mean, I think I would probably have suggested rook d1 to a stronger group because that just simply allows queen takes bishop on b2. Rook h3 has sense, but the best move here is clearly to take on h7. And I think this was a unanimous verdict. We should take that pawn. Well, black's got to take it. In comes the queen. This is all forced. And the next move was so strong that it forced resignation. So what was that move? Again, was it option A, rook h3? Was it option B, rook h4? Or was it option C, f5? Okay, over to you. Well, this is a funny position. I mean, it looks as though black should probably have more counterplay than he does have. The white queen's doing a fantastic job there, stopping black's queen from checking the king. Nakamura played rook h4. And I hope you all got that move. It's just a crushing move, actually. White's simple threat is rook g4. He's protecting the pawn on f4. And black doesn't have any checks with his queen. So, without any sort of defence at all to rook g4, Smirin decided to resign. I mean, let's just have a look at the other moves. Of course, f5 is a blunder because that allows the black queen back into the game to give checks. Rook h3. Well, that might be okay because, of course, black cannot take the pawn on f4. Rook f3. So rook h3 would probably score just as well. But rook h4, very good. Rook g4 is the threat. Game over. And Smirin resigned. So the kids reacted very well to that session. Some of them scored extremely well, which bodes well for their attacking chess. And it was an enjoyable session. I hope you enjoyed that game. And we move on next week when I think Nigel Povar is going to take the top group.